It is 6 o'clock. The Monday, October 24th, meeting of the Marquette City Commission is now called to order at 6 p.m. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Bonsall?
Here.
Commissioner Davis? Commissioner Hanley?
Here.
Commissioner Hill?
Here.
Commissioner Stonehouse? Mayor Pro Tem Mayor?
Here.
And Mayor Smith.
Here. Commissioners, do we have a motion to excuse Commissioners Davis and Stonehouse and a reason? Anyone? Pro Tem Mayor, will you raise your hand? Sorry.
Go ahead.
I move to excuse both Commissioners Stonehouse and Davis, who could not be here tonight for personal reasons.
Oh, do we have a second? Commissioner Bonsall?
I'll second that motion, Your Honor.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. We have an agenda this evening. Commissioners, do we have a motion on this agenda? Commissioner Bonsall?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
And do we have a second? Pro Tem Mayor?
I'll second the motion, Your Honor.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. I have no announcements this evening. On to boards and committees. We have 2 appointments. Do we have a motion on the appointments? Commissioner Hanley.
I move that we appoint Caden Cahill to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board for an unexpired term ending 1/29/23 and a term ending 1/29/26, and Christopher Rose to the Marquette Housing Commission for an unexpired term ending 1/25/25.
And do we have a second? Pro Tem Mayor?
Second, Your Honor.
Any discussion?
I just would like to thank them for pitching in and doing more. It's really nice to see these boards all filling up.
Pro Tem?
Same.
Okay, anyone else? All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. That brings us to our first public comment session of the evening. Public comments may not exceed 3 minutes per person. Please state your name and physical address. Anyone for public comment?
Hello. Hi, my name is Meredith Lyons. I live at 408 Norwood Street, Marquette. I'm here today to voice my concerns and frustration to yet another water rate increase on my city bill. I bought my first house on Norwood Street 8 years ago. In that time, my Marquette city bill has increased by 75%. I live alone, and I have been very frugal with the water that I use daily. I have noticed a yearly increase in my water bill. The increase seems to be the same, about $4 every year. The most recent water increase makes the same claim that the sewer general needs improvement. How many improvements need to be made? Can I get some explanation for the continual increase? I have read that the current inflation has something to do with the increase. How does inflation really and honestly have anything to do with the raising costs of our water rates? I have family that live in Metro Detroit and a friend that lives in Columbus, Ohio. They all live about, they all pay about $40 a month for their water and garbage pickup fees. Again, I ask, why do the citizens of Marquette have to pay such high prices for water? Water is a necessity, which we all need to have. I have read the most recent article about the water increase, which written in the Mining Journal on October 19th. The reason for the increases still doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. There has to be a cutoff point for the water increases. Should I expect to pay the city of Marquette in the next few years or so of $200 or more a month for water. I would also like to see my city bill to be more understandable regarding my water usage. The current water usage is based on a 1 through 4 system. Could our utility bills show how many gallons of water each of us are using? My Simcoe and Board of Light and Power bills show how much of my usage is for the past year. That is helpful. I know that my concerns will matter little, but I felt
3 minutes. Thank you for your comments. Our chance to respond is at the very end of the meeting. Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Anyone else? Okay, seeing no further public comment is now closed. Up next, we have our consent agenda. Commissioners, do we have a motion on consent? Pro Tem Mayor?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
And do we have a second? Commissioner Bonzo?
I'll second that motion, Your Honor.
Pro Tem Mayor, any discussion?
No.
Commissioner Bonzo? Anyone else? All right, this does not require a roll call vote. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. On to new business. Item 3, application for a license to use city property adjacent to 848 Cedar Street and 511 East Prospect Street. City Clerk, could we have the background, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Matt Trito has submitted an application for a license to use a portion of city property on parcel number 0490040 for an existing fence and proposed extension of that fence with new materials to enclose a portion of the 848 Cedar Street property. The existing fence was placed after an easement was granted to Timothy Trito by the LS&I Railroad, the former landowner, in 1993. It is approximately 226 feet long and encloses about 1,800 square feet of municipal land. The proposed fence extension would be about 64 feet long and enclose approximately 512 square feet of the city parcel. See the attachments to the application for graphics and details. City staff reviewers from the Community Development and Public Works Departments are opposed to approval of the request due to there being no apparent hardship or unusual circumstances that would justify allowing the enclosure of more of the public property, and thus the city attorney has not been asked to draft a license. Fiscal effect: the FY 2021-2022 application fee for a license to use city property was $255 and has been paid. Recommendation: deny the request. Alternatives: grant the request and direct the city attorney to draft a license agreement, which agreement would come back to the city commission for approval at a future date.
Thank you, City Clerk. Commissioners, do we have a motion on this item? Pro Tem Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to deny the request based on the grounds that there is no apparent hardship or unusual circumstances that would justify the enclosure of more public property.
And do we have a second? Commissioner Hill?
I second the motion.
Pro Tem Mayor, any discussion?
No, Your Honor.
Am I able to, I'm not able to comment on anything?
No, at this point, the motion has occurred. This is a new business item. Public comment would have been in the time to comment unless there are questions by the commission. We could allow privileged comment if that is the case, but at this point, not yet, or not at this point. I'm sorry, so where was I? Were you in the middle of your comments?
I didn't necessarily have any further
Okay.
further comment on it.
Okay, Commissioner Hill, any comment?
Not at this time, but I understand Commissioner Hanley has comment.
Sure. Commissioner Hanley?
I was wondering if we could allow privileged comment so we could hear a little bit more.
Sure, I'd be fine with that. I just needed a commissioner to make the request. Go ahead and approach center podium. Thank you. And your name's Matt Trudeau, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody. Matt Trito, UP Engineers and Architects, 2915 Parkview Drive, and then 511 East Prospect Street and 848 Cedar Street. So we had submitted this request both for the existing fence. The original fence was in place prior to my parents purchasing the property in 1986. How long it stood in this location prior to that is unknown to us, but it's been in its current location for at least the last 36 years. Recently, we completed a project on the north half of the parcel. That's the section that you can see in your packet that extends towards that northern part of the triangle within our application packet. The existing fence, as demonstrated by Kyle or summarized by Kyle, is approximately 225 feet. The last 70 feet is an extension to that north property line. The reason why we submitted was to remain with the existing fence line as it currently runs along the pedestrian corridor. The pedestrian corridor is 60 feet wide. Also in your packet, there is a photo of that pedestrian corridor that shows basically the extent of the public use within this pedestrian corridor. It is being used exactly how it's intended. I coordinated with Andrew McLever, Mick Kilpala, Dave Stensis. All of the master planning documents basically boils down to this page from the Parks and Recs Capital Improvements Plan, which basically states that it's being used as its intended purpose by the city of Marquette, and that the only potential development or further development of this corridor would be a ADA accessible walkway. So basically the exact same location that it's already currently being used. The current fence line has no restriction or impact to that current pedestrian corridor, and there is no adverse impact of the city's use of that property or the public's use of that property. What this allows us to do is this allows us to have a more normal shaped yard with a square end of it so that we can get in and access the entirety of the property. Anytime you've tried to deal with the maintenance issues associated with a triangular fence line, especially one this narrow, it's only 60 feet at the bottom, 90 feet tall. So the hardship that is present is our ability to actually access and maintain the north part of the property. So the reason why we're requesting this is we believe this to be a reasonable and minor request that poses no negative impact whatsoever to the public or city use of the space. There are comments from the DPW concerning infrastructure or utilities. There are corridors to the west and the east. In fact, the Cedar Street right-of-way actually touches the pedestrian corridor and includes all the water, sewer, storm, and electrical infrastructure that is owned and operated by the city of Marquette. So in the event, obviously, that the city decides to change its mind and update its capital improvements plans and comes up with a different approach for what we're looking to do here, we would have the financial responsibility of removing and relocating the fence anyway. But based on my analysis and my coordination with city staff, there is no current plan to do anything than what is currently taking place there. And there is no adverse impact to the city's use or the public's use within this space. And the hardship, once again, is the abnormal size and dimensions of the lot, which is why we submitted the request.
Thank you. If we have additional questions or comments, we'll let you know. Thank you. Other comments or discussion from the commission? We have to make sure all other commissioners have had a chance to speak first. Commissioner Bonzel or Commissioner Hanley, I guess? Either. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I appreciate Commissioner Hanley, given and Mayor Smith giving Mr. Trito an opportunity to speak and make his case. I will say, I understand, Mr. Trito, where you're coming from, and I mean, I suppose if I was in your shoes, I'd want a more normal shaped yard as well and would want to move forward with this project. And I think that, the arguments that were made about, well, the city is basically planning to continue using this as a pedestrian corridor and, it's not a super high impact, it doesn't seem, at least on the face of it, to be a very high impact, change to this area, would be valid if we weren't on the cusp of creating a new community master plan that will be guiding future capital improvement plans, strategic plans. And I actually have a feeling that the city's plans for future use of this property over the next 5 to 10 years may likely change as a result of the community master plan. This is a kind of a prime recreational area that more and more people are using. We have discussions about, how can we make Marquette a more walkable, bikeable city? We've had discussions about, dog parks and things like that. There could be some, I think, new uses of this area in the future that we need to be mindful of. And I do think that we need to be very reluctant to allow any encroachment on city property, on especially in a recreational area. So I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to vote on this. I want to hear what other commissioners' thoughts are or responses to the arguments that were presented, but I have to admit that I'm a bit skeptical at this time. Maybe in a year or two, once we have a new master plan, we might be able to evaluate this request a little bit more fairly, I think.
Commissioner Hanley, did you have anything you wanted to?
I think this is more for city staff, just so I can understand this. I'm looking at the diagram of the fence where it's at and what wants to be extended. Is there a fence that runs along Cedar Street as well in this? Nope. So this fence would just put it a little bit further and then in a touch, and so there's no actual fencing in of anything. I'm sorry. Yeah, you might be the best person to answer this.
Yeah,
I
so
apologize.
the application or the license is specific just to the pedestrian corridor because the fence along Cedar Street would be within the property line.
Okay, but you intend to put a fence there, though?
Correct,
Okay,
yeah.
I was just confused.
Sounds good.
Okay. And you own that triangle that's behind there?
Correct, yep.
Okay. That's all I think I have from you. I think I'm good. I don't know. I think I'm good for now.
Okay, I guess I'll just put in my 2 cents first, so I have a chance to speak. Did you have a chance yet? Did I miss you?
No, we skipped her.
Well, then you could have corrected me. I'm sorry. Commissioner Hill, it's all you.
Sorry, thank you. I gave it to.
I got mixed up.
That's okay. What I'm confused about, and I had a clarifying question that I hope is helpful to everyone, which is, so this is page 63 of the packet, by the way, if anyone's following at home. Page 63 of the packet. It says existing legally non-conforming fence. So it sounds like my reading was that the fence is currently enclosing public land. Is that correct?
I can explain it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
As I understand, and Suzanne, you can correct me, but there was an easement for that fence historically from LS&I to the previous property owner.
Okay.
And then the city had claimed ownership of the property, which means that easement is invalid. But because the fence is existing in the right-of-way, the way we would treat it as would be what we would call legally non-conforming because it was there. If something were to happen to it, they would have to come back and seek some type of legal permission to be able to reconstruct it.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And so I think, for me, that reinforces what Commissioner Bonsall said, which is we are about to go through a planning process to consider, in very broad terms, recreational access and potential corridors of activity. So coming in and putting a line down now on something that has this status of not somewhat gray status, I'll say. Let's decide what we're going to do with the entire area and then come back and do the designations. I think the designations that would then make that very clear as opposed to leaving it gray. And I hear that, it's been there, and there is still plenty of room and use, but it is non-conforming with where the actual property lines are. Is that so? I mean, is the parcel is somewhere? The parcel lines are not where the fence is. I guess I want to.
Yeah, the fence is encroaching on city property currently, but it was legal at the time when it was owned by LS&I.
Yeah, so that just, and I thinking of the number of times in the 4 years I've been up here where we go in and we've made the titles official. So we've come in and there's been a property title where 100-foot was added or 100-foot was taken back. To me, this seems like it's that kind of case where eventually what we want to get to is let's have the title match what's on the ground. And it doesn't seem like this step would make that happen to me.
I think I'll ask the city manager for clarification on that. Are we only looking at what's in the purple part, or are we looking at the red and the purple? Does that make sense?
At this point, we're talking about just the extension for that, but essentially what that would be doing is further enclosing public land into a private use, and that is the concern that we've had and the reason why we were talking about that recommendation.
Okay.
And again, if
So
there
the
is
other
something
piece could be
happens-
addressed later.
If something does happen with that fence, they would have to come back and legally request something to replace that fence. And then that would be a different consideration when we talk about the hardship of that.
Anything else, Commissioner Hill?
No.
My apologies for
Yeah, no,
not
no,
going out of order earlier. I would just like to add that I can certainly understand where you're coming from. Precedent setting is what comes to my mind. We're going through, like everyone has mentioned, a master planning process, but in addition to that, we've had several, in my time, things like this come before us, and there will be many more after us. And the part I don't really have a problem with the current fence, but extending it, becomes problematic because we don't yet know what we want to do with that piece of land. So I'm having trouble, supporting the new addition of the fence and what you're proposing. So I can empathize with your situation, but I wanted to let you know that's where I'm coming from on this one. Commissioner Hanley?
How many feet of encroachment is there on this? It's that from that little black line to the purple line, correct?
It says 226
Correct.
feet long.
So it's 9 feet? Okay, that's what I need. Now, the part that I look at this is, we are all talking about the same thing, where we don't know what it'll be. This is probably going to be some sort of pedestrian thing. And in that case, I worry that if we don't allow this man to block his backyard off, that is going to be the cut across for the pedestrian area, for all the people to walk through. Because he does own the majority of that triangle. He doesn't own the 9 feet, but the rest of it he does, that he's going to build a fence. And I worry that that backyard is going to become other people stepping into his private property because we didn't give him the extension of the fence. Have you looked at, sir, I'm sorry to bother you again, have you looked at bringing a step into the property line on that fence area over there?
Yeah, so I mean, that would be the practical alternative in the situation where you guys deny the request for the 70-foot extension. And I can appreciate the process, right, of doing your strategic plan, et cetera. I'm a municipal engineer who, focuses specifically on strategic project development. So I understand the process that you're going through, which is a very long and cumbersome one. So, with my last pitch or last appeal here, maybe let's call it a Hail Mary. We have only a 70-foot stretch of fence that could potentially be subjected to relocation depending on what the city decides to do in 5, 10, 20, 40 years, right? And given the limited investment that we would have to make for a small 70-foot extension, we'd be willing to take on the risk that the city of Marquette comes back 5 years from now and says, okay, we've completed our planning process. Here's our 10-year capital improvements plan. And in 10 years, we're going to put in a parking lot or whatever. I mean, and like I said, I'm just, my guess is that this is going to be a long-term pedestrian corridor, and then it'll probably be what it remains. But we've got a long process. It's a long planning process to go through your guys' updated capital improvements plan. It's an even longer process to actually update your capital improvements plan and then start executing those projects. And during that time, we could be utilizing that space to actually be able to not only have a better lawn, but actually beautify a larger section of that pedestrian corridor. That pedestrian corridor is not pretty. It is gravel and it is weeds. So we're going to be turning that into a nice fence and a manicured lawn. So I mean, during that time, everybody's going to benefit from the improvement that we're recommending while you guys go through the planning process. And at the end of the planning process, you guys decide we're doing something completely different. We need every inch of that pedestrian right away. Then we relocate the fence.
Perfect. Thank you for that answer.
I think Commissioner Bonzo had his hand up first.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have two follow-up questions to that for our staff, actually. So the first is, could, in the future, let's say, for argument's sake, we want to create a dog park here, and we decide we need that extra space. Could we require that fence to be relocated back off of the city property once we've given this license?
I'm going to look at Dennis for that one.
It'd be only the purple portion. The existing fence is legal and good standing, non-conforming, unless something catastrophic happened to it.
Okay, so we could require at least the purple portion to be relocated, and that would be at the expense of the owner or the city?
Maybe the owner.
So what we would do is we would just terminate the license, and it would be on the owner to remove the fence from the property and restore it back to its current condition.
Okay, that makes sense. And then my final follow-up question on that is, I've heard, one or two folks express concerns about setting precedents. It's my recollection that, we've had similar situations like this come up where, somebody wants to build a taller fence than is allowed or whatever. By granting this license, would we be setting a precedent that could potentially bind us in, future decisions about situations like this?
It wouldn't necessarily be binding, but it would set an example. Most of the licenses that I've been involved with drafting are for things that already exist that are being replaced. They're not for things that you're enclosing public land onto private use. So that would be the one difference. That would maybe encourage people to come back and say, hey, you did it for him, you need to do it for me. That might make it hard for you to say no the next time.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Commissioner Hill?
So to me, that leads to the question of changing the title of the property to encompass what is currently on the ground, which is kind of where I was headed before. Is that an option? I'm looking at both of you. Like, is there a way to just make the legal boundaries of the title fit what's going here?
I mean, are you asking if the city would be willing to sell them the land?
Yeah. So the city would sell them the land, the 9 feet.
So
70 feet of extension.
9 feet by 70 or 9 feet by 295. We explored this option, right, Dennis? And it was determined that that portion of the pedestrian corridor was not available for sale. So we did explore that option. That was the question that came up, and I was
Yeah,
like, why
thank
don't you
you.
just purchase 9 feet? And I said, okay.
Yeah.
And then the brakes got put on, because
There's a-
obviously.
There's a long history with that pedestrian corridor that includes a tremendous amount of legal work done by Richard Graybill some time ago, probably 19, 20 years ago, about claiming the title and who owns it and the clean title associated with that land. And that's where he's accurate in reflecting that I didn't believe that we could provide any clean title to that on any sale.
Because the rails is true.
Because of the railroads, yep. I am familiar, railroad title is very, 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 very challenging, so, yeah.
Which was the surprise that my dad actually had an easement for the fence in the first place. It was very surprising.
I was trying to get you.
Yeah, no, we tried.
I wanted
we
to try to get you
and-
there.
And so we've explored all options. I mean, this is kind of our option of last resort in the sense of at least keeping the existing fence line.
Any other discussion? Pro Tem Mayor.
Thank you. I just have 2 final thoughts, I think, on this. One is I, to some degree, almost have some concern for you if at a future date, the majority of the currently existing fence needs to be replaced. If a future commission was not to approve it, you would have a very small portion of a fence still standing and then a lot that's just, you would have to take down. So that's a little bit of a concern, I guess, for you that I'm having. I'm also curious if city staff can maybe mention this, because I am not a zoning code expert here, but typically, is there a setback based off the property line that would actually increase this more than the 9 feet that's here if it was, the fence was put in by the book kind of thing?
Dennis, I'm going to look at you for that specific.
Yeah, there's no setback requirement for fences. They can be placed on the property line.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think that's all I had.
Okay, any other discussion from the commission? Okay, let's go ahead and take a vote.
Can I,
Sure.
sorry. I guess I feel like I need to restate the question at this point.
That's what Commissioner Hanley
Thank you.
just asked if we could have the city clerk please read the motion back to us.
So we had a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Hill, to deny the request due to there being no apparent hardship or unusual circumstance that would justify allowing the enclosure of more of the public property.
We ready to take a vote? All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed?
No.
Motion passes 4-1.
Thanks, everybody. Sorry for so much
No
time
worries,
over.
thank you. Last on new business, Donahue and Associates, Inc. Engineering Services Contract. This is item 4. Commissioners, do we have a motion on this item? Oh, sorry, city clerk background, please.
Thank you, Mayor. At its October 13th, 2020 meeting, the City Commission unanimously approved wastewater engineering design service for a state revolving fund, SRF, solids handling improvement project at the wastewater treatment facility. The bids for the project came in $1.8 million over the estimate, and staff decided to delay the project and reapply for SRF funding, with the hope that the bidding environment would improve and that more grant funding would be available. Staff has now been notified that the city was successful in securing a state SRF low-interest loan for $11,715,000 that includes a $5,857,500 principal forgiveness grant. Staff has negotiated a contract with Donahue and Associates for the solids handling improvements project rebid engineering services during construction and applications engineering. Fiscal effect: the wastewater budget has sufficient funds for this expense and will be reimbursed from the state revolving fund loan. Recommendation: approve the contract with Donahue and Associates, Inc. for the Solids Handling Improvements Project rebid, engineering services during construction, and applications engineering project for a not-to-exceed amount of $542,200, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the contract. Alternatives as determined by the commission.
Thank you, City Clerk. Commissioners, we have a motion. Commissioner Hill.
I move that we approve the contract with Donahue and Associates, Inc. for the Solids Handling Improvements Project rebid, engineering services during construction, and applications engineering project for a not-to-exceed amount of $542,200, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the contract.
And do we have a second? Commissioner Bonzel?
I'll second the motion, Your Honor.
Commissioner Hill, any discussion?
Well, I just, kudos to staff for having the foresight to hold off on a very expensive project and then bringing essentially $5 million into the city. Thank you very much for that work. Well done. And we'll speak it more to this on the in the commissioner comments, but as was raised, the concern about our increasing water rates, this infrastructure is very, very expensive, and to know that we're saving $5.5 million or more, 5.8 million is really good news. Thank you very much.
And do we have, is it Commissioner Bonzo who made the second? Do you have any discussion? Okay, any other commissioners? All right, let's go ahead and take a vote. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. On to our second public comment session. Members of the public wishing to speak, you have 3 minutes. Please state your name and physical address. We've got a race.
Barb Outside, 1324 North Front. I feel a little silly asking you guys this, but I hope someone can address the whole master plan public participation process. I'm a little confused when I go, yeah, oh good, at least you guys understand. That's all. If you're going to talk about it, that'd be great. Thanks.
Anyone else for public comment?
Margaret from 404 East Magnetic Street. I missed the last meeting when asking about a food poisoning, and I wanted to come to address the establishment of the Community Master Plan Steering Committee. As you know, the master plan is going to be relied upon more and more as the Planning Commission gets away from reviewing every possible change and relies upon what is in the master plan for the guide. I attended the kickoff meeting at the Planning Commission where the consultants came in and where various representatives that were named to the steering committee had an opportunity to come to the podium and talk about their concerns for the community master plan. I was very disappointed that the 2 representatives named by the commission, city commissioners that were not present. I was also disappointed that the 1 representative named by the city commission that didn't represent a group, Mr. Koski, was also not present. And not being a member of the steering committee, my comments were limited to 3 minutes. I did reach out to the member of the group later on and sent an email that was more extensive. But I'm here requesting that I be assigned as a citizen representative to the steering committee, because in the absence of input from the community, the people who are responsible for proposing a steering committee proposing a community master plan made it absolutely clear that in the absence of input from the representatives of the steering committee, they will go ahead and make their own recommendations. Therefore, I don't believe we can rely upon the people you've picked when 3 critical people didn't show up. And this is not me picking on any one person. This is me saying you need another person to represent the people at large. I'm willing to undertake this in my own time, my own effort, because this community master plan is going to control too many decisions to have it left in the hands of the people who show up, or more importantly, for the representatives who've been named who choose not to show up. So again, I'm hoping you will amend the steering committee to add my name. I promise I will represent a lot of people who come to me and ask about certain things and why they are the way they are. In addition to the steering committee, I was very impressed with the people that you hired to do the community master plan. Obviously, they've done a great deal of work on master plans. However, their tour of the city was being done at a date and time when there was no snow on the ground. And I think this is a considerable deficit in how they're touring. I invited them to come back in March and test their challenges to the master plan. When we are covered with snow, there's no place to breathe and there's no place to put the snow. And these are some of the comments that I made when they were hearing about. So again, my conclusion is, please appoint me as a citizen representative to the Community Master Plan Steering Committee. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Seeing no other comment, comment is now closed. That brings us to comments from the commission. We'll start off with Commissioner Bonzel.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I just had a couple of comments on, first of all, we did have the public comment about the water and sewer rates, and we did approve an increase this year. And I will say, in comparison to past increases that we saw maybe 2-3 years ago, which were quite substantial, I think that the commission has adopted or is following a new schedule of planned rate increases over the next 5 to 10 years that are designed to really kind of keep pace with inflation and be more modest and easier for people to adapt to within their budgets, as opposed to looking at, a 10, 15, 20% increase in 1 year. Many communities, like, another incorporated city here in the UP had an 80% increase in 1 year a few years ago, right? So that's a different approach that we're not taking. But certainly, people are feeling it in their pocketbooks. I think we've seen data that shows that at least, past increases certainly have increased the percentage of people who are receiving shut-off notices. We've been trying to work with people, and I think have been very successful in working with people to make sure that their bills do eventually get paid. But it is a financial challenge for folks, especially those who are on fixed incomes in the city, lower income folks in the city. But, there was the question was asked, well, can there come a cutoff point on these rate increases? And, is there really that much work that needs to be done? And I think, as we've seen tonight, with the last agenda item we just voted on, right? We're talking about wastewater treatment facility, bids coming in almost $2 million over our estimate initially. And now we're extremely fortunate that we're getting nearly $6 million in principal forgiveness for this grant. But it's a massively expensive, multi-million-dollar project. And probably our water, sewer, and stormwater system is the most capital intensive, the most expensive thing that we do as a city, and also the highest stakes, because everybody needs their water to run. They need the toilet to flush. They need to be able to have running water coming into their house and know that it's safe and clean to drink, which sadly many communities can't say that right now, who haven't made those investments in their water infrastructure. And as far as the amount of work that needs to be done, these statistics are a couple of years old, but a couple of years ago I shared some info on Facebook and some maps. The city of Marquette has 88 miles of sewers, 98.3 miles of water mains. About 7% of our sewers and water mains are more than 100 years old. And 20% of our sewers and 23% of our water mains are more than 60 years old. We actually have some water mains and sewers, at least as of a couple of years ago, that were built in the 1870s. So there is a lot of old infrastructure that is well overdue for replacement. And really what we're doing right now is those rates haven't kept up with the cost of future improvements and maintenance that needs to happen. So, you use a kind of strained football analogy with high school playoffs, and I can definitely relate to this as a Packers fan right now. We are carrying the ball that we've been handed, and we've got a lot of lost yardage to make up just to get back to the line of scrimmage, right? So I think that we definitely understand the pain people are feeling on that one, but the alternative is we don't have a functioning water and sewer system in the city. And I don't think anybody would find that to be acceptable. The other thing that I just wanted to mention is we do have an election coming up, Election Day, November 8th. The polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Even if you get there right at 8 p.m., you will be allowed to vote, even if there's a line. Just make sure you bring your photo ID. Also, my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, City Clerk, if I get these times wrong, but Monday through Friday, during regular City Clerk business hours from 7:30 to 4:30, people can vote early at City Hall with a photo ID, and also on Wednesdays, you all are open till 7 p.m., correct? Excellent. And then also the Saturday before Election Day, they have extended hours that are similar to regular business hours. So would really encourage people to vote early or to go to the polls on Election Day. If you're going to vote absentee, I would request that ballot right now because it could take up to 2 weeks to process. So with that, I will give back to the mayor.
Commissioner Hanley.
All right, perfect. I was also going to touch on what Ms. Lyons had mentioned. The one thing I was going to point out is I believe she left, but we did have a special meeting on that on the 12th of September. It was at 4:15, I believe. And if you go onto our YouTube, you can see it on there and watch all the discussion that went behind our rate increase. And I found there was a lot of really good information that we got that day. So I would suggest watching that if you have any questions. Absolutely go vote for everyone. I have a couple questions for the city manager, if that's okay. The first one is, how was the steering committee picked? Not necessarily the commissioners, but the rest of it. And you don't have to give me that right now. And then the other one is, how many openings do we have left on our boards that we have for all the volunteers? It's one of those ones I've been trying to find, but I don't think it's super updated on the site yet. So I know it's a long one. That's a long-term one. And then I just want to remind people that trick-or-treating is coming up on Monday. And actually Saturday the 29th, we have downtown trick-or-treating on the 100 and 200 blocks of Washington Street that will be closed to traffic, which is super nice because it's always been very congested and very scary with little kids running across the street to all the different things. Regular trick-or-treating hours are going to be 4 to 7 in the city of Marquette. And I just implore everyone that is out in their vehicles on Halloween and on the downtown trick-or-treating day to keep your eyes open for the tiny little people running in the dark. That's it.
Pro Tem Mayor.
I'm good.
Commissioner Hill.
Thank you. So, a clarification, are we doing Halloween on Monday or Sunday?
Monday.
We are doing it on Monday, thank you.
So we have our meeting tonight.
Okay, so, I thought I saw somewhere on some webpage somewhere that we were doing it on Sunday. So Monday we are having Halloween. All right. And on the question of water rates, there is several statewide organizations that offer assistance. There is something called the Heat and Warmth Fund that can provide help on utility assistance. There's also the Michigan Homeowner Assistance Fund. If you are a homeowner, there are funds through the American Rescue Plan, federal funds that went to the state, to MISHDA. And if you Google Michigan Homeowner Assistance Fund, you can apply to receive assistance on meeting utility bills, particularly post-COVID. And that's what that money was initially for. So, and you can also call UPCAP at 511 and ask for payment plans and assistance. So I want to make sure folks understand that there are resources available to help for immediate needs and what you might see coming. And so in particular, the 511 resource, give them a call. You talk to a person, they will walk you through what your situation and what you could possibly apply for. So they can't help you apply on the phone, but they can tell you what the options are. Now, to get to the reason for our costs, I'm sure we'll hear more from staff, but understanding that in our system is, as Commissioner Bonsall said, roughly 100 miles of service lines, and our population is what it is. And so, and and this city has gone from being a pretty industrial place 70, 80 years ago when many of these lines were put in to now being a primarily residential with some commercial. And so the cost allocations across the residential sector to the business sector aren't what they were when this system was built. And that has put an increased burden on our residential customers. So I think we're going to need to be creative going forward at looking at ways to think about how we could, what other resources could be brought to bear to address how we pay for a water system that might be in all of our interests. Do we go think about going to different geographies? Do we think about how we've already looked at changing the fixed rate versus the rates that are paid to make it more like inflation, as was said. That reduces the burden on those on fixed incomes. I think we might eventually have to look at how to expand the geography of the system, which could be in the benefit of a lot of us throughout the entire region as we're looking at how we deal with climate change and possible population growth. So I'm excited about those opportunities because there's a lot of federal funding and federal resources to help make that happen. So one, there is immediate help, call 511, and then two, I think looking at these questions of water infrastructure in particular, we have a 3-community wastewater treatment system. What might we need to do in the future for our drinking water system to expand it? Then, let's see. It's also brush pickup is happening right now. Luckily, we didn't get the snow too much to wet things down as has happened in previous years. And so hopefully folks will have a chance to get their brush out. We can get that cleared out before the snow really starts to stick. And then wishing everyone a happy Halloween.
I think most items were touched on. The one I wanted to make sure that we cover is the master planning public input sessions. At this point, those are being determined by the consultant that we hired and that strategic planning group that has been put together. At this point, that group has been finalized by both the City Commission and the Planning Commission. We're not looking to add members at this point in time to that group. However, that group and the consultant will put out in the future, the near future, I don't have a timeline, dates for in-person and virtual participation. More to come. When we have it, we will also share it here. We'll be reminding folks on our social media pages, etc. So you won't miss it. I think that's everything I wanted to cover. I was wondering if our city manager could touch on that piece a little bit in case you have any additional specifics that I left out. Thank you.
Certainly. There's a lot of questions here, so I do have the steering committee selection, an update on that one as well, just the steering committee in general and public participation, and then openings on the boards and committees, and then I do want to touch on those water and sewer rates as well. So first, the steering committee selection. So the members or the various groups, and then the people that are associated with those or representing those groups were selected or determined with recommendations from the consultant based off of some of the things that we know within our community and the needs that we do have. So the steering committee is really intended to ensure that there is that project oversight and participation from a broad representation of the community. Obviously, we have many even more groups than what are being represented there, but for the organization part of it, we really tried to get a good representation from the big groups, also knowing full well that we have to reach beyond those as well. So the staff or the members that were selected are ones that the expectation will be that they are communicating back into the community and really trying to solicit that feedback and really try to promote participation. So that is why you see those members that you have selected, and those came at recommendations from the consultant and from staff and from obviously the commission on the decision as well. So just because somebody is not listed within that steering committee does not mean that there's no way that those members are going to be able to, or those people are going to be able to participate. There will absolutely be that opportunity. It might even be more of a very one-on-one conversation in some ways too. So I am excited to announce that There is a website that will be handling most of the communication, but also facilitating some of this process as well. Right now, it is going to be announced tomorrow with further information, and you do have an option or an opportunity to sign up for some of those notifications and be getting that information directly. So please look for that tomorrow. I don't want to just announce it just yet, just in case it is not live, but we will have more information on that. And then those input sessions will be announced and further recruited for participation. So again, really looking at that long-term vision. So I hope that answers some questions. Openings on the boards and committees, unfortunately, this seems to be a list that continues to grow, which is a very good, not the openings, but the members in the boards and committees continues to grow, as we saw 2 new appointments just now at the meeting. So I don't have an updated list right at this moment with those openings, but that will be a priority here shortly. It might take a week or 2 to update. Might even be after the election, just because we have a lot of staff that are all hands on deck. But we are certainly trying to get that updated both on our website and as a master list here. So I apologize for not having that exact information handy. In regards to the water and sewer rates, I do want to also say that this project going forward with that we just discussed with Donahue and Associates actually is expanding our biosolids handling area, which means we can receive more, which might also lead to some increased revenue sources. But again, that is very preliminary, and that is very much years down the road until we complete that project. But our water and sewer rates, the information is also posted on our website. I do encourage residents to contact our finance department, the utility billing department for any referrals, or really to talk through the situation to make sure that we can maybe even match up with further resources along with UPCAP. And I don't have the number to confirm, but utility billing department is at 906-228-0420, and they can connect you with proper resources as well, including UPCAP. There are several programs out there available and several options, including payment plans, even with our own department. And also, we redid the study for utility rates to project out for 10 years and really made it a point, and the commission had expressed this at a meeting, to really make it a point to try to have the least amount of impact in these first few years here, to really understand what we've been giving in the past 5 years. So I'm really proud with what we've been able to manage here and really take into consideration all of the expenditures that we have right now and that we are trying to catch up on, as Commissioner Bonzel had stated. So again, please do not be afraid to reach out. We are here to help. And that is all. Thank you.
All right, we are adjourned at 6:52 p.m. Thanks, everyone.